Inside Oklahoma's MacAlford Correctional Center, I spoke with Channen Smith, a man who spent 15 years in prison for a murder he says he didn't commit. In 2017, another man confessed. And in a rare move, Smith filed his own petition of habeas corpus, asking a federal judge to free him from a state prison. In April, Judge Sarah Hill responded, quote, "Based on the foregoing and having carefully considered all evidence, old and new, the court is persuaded that, in light of the new evidence, no juror, acting reasonably, would have voted to find Smith guilty beyond a reasonable doubt." And what was your reaction?
I was ecstatic. I was really excited. I've been told no for a long time, so it was happy to see someone finally view the evidence and respond accordingly.
And then the Oklahoma Attorney General filed a response. In his response, he essentially said that he disagreed with the judge's reasoning. He disagreed with your claims of actual innocence, and he's asking the judge to either reject her ruling or allow for a hearing before allowing you to be free so that the state can argue essentially why they should keep you locked up.
Right.
What are your thoughts about what the AG has said?
So many thoughts about what he said, what he had to say. Honestly, it's upsetting. It's very frustrating that it was just myself who people were saying, you don't know what you're talking about. The evidence isn't there. You were convicted from a jury of your peers. Finally I get in front of a federal district judge who knows her job, who's educated, who's viewed the evidence, taken the time, and now he assumes she's wrong too. It makes no sense. When a judge finds you guilty of a crime, then everyone seems to be on board, including the AG. But when a judge says that, hey, something's not right here, this guy may actually be innocent, then now you disagree with the judge. So it seems convenient, strong bias. It makes me feel like the rumors are true when people talk about how Oklahoma is a state of finality of conviction over justice. My constitutional rights were violated, a number of them. She's pointed that out. And the people in authority are literally breaking the law and in a supposed attempt to uphold it. And it's upsetting. It's frustrating that my rights don't seem to matter.
Because the AG is saying that he has a strong, he believes that if given an opportunity, he can make a strong case for your guilt. So talk about that time period where you were accused and where you were arrested for something that you say you've never done. Talk about that moment. And
the date of my arrest?
Yeah.
Oh man, November 17th, 2010. I was leaving my parents' house. My probation officer had actually asked me to come in, and I was heading his direction, leaving my parents' house. And the day before, I was court ordered to get my driver's license back because I was driving, looking for jobs. Legally, I wasn't supposed to be. My driver's license was revoked, and so I didn't realize that I could be sent to prison for, driving on a revoked license on probation. So I went and got my license back. I had to take Mothers Against Drunk Driving and Driving 360, all these different things to get my license back. Paid maybe $600, $700 for that. My license was like $600, and the day before my arrest, I'd actually went to the DMV and got my license renewed. So I was driving when I was pulled over legally. So when I initially saw the first car, I was kind of excited. Like, I'm not driving illegal anymore. This isn't going to be a big deal. It's a normal traffic stop. And I look in my rear view again, and there's multiple vehicles. By the time I pull over, next to Pond and Harbor, I believe, there were so many cars, and I heard a dog barking. I'd seen this play out on movies and different crime stories all this time, but I've never experienced that. I was terrified. I was confused. And for the longest, officers wouldn't tell me what was going on. I was repeatedly asking, why am I being arrested? What's going on? And no one would tell me. He would tell you when we get down to the precinct. And Finally, I believe his name was Officer Matt Hart, who was the arresting officer. He was just to treat people on arrest warrants. And I asked him, like, what's going on? And he finally explained, what was taking place. And still confused, he just told me, he's like, listen, Northside Division is behind. They don't know. Basically, they're confused. They don't know what's going on either, so to speak. And that was upsetting, but it also gave me hope. Okay, maybe this is a misunderstanding. It'll be sorted out when we get to the precinct. I get to the precinct. I talked to Detective Vic Relato. He seemed genuine, forthcoming at first, so I was comfortable to speak with him without an attorney. I didn't have anything to hide, so why not? And he made it seem like that if I could prove that I wasn't the guy they were looking for, that I could go home. So I sat there and answered all of his questions. So we got to the point where I wouldn't confess to a crime I didn't commit, and then he told me that I was insulting his intelligence, saying that I didn't commit this crime. So at that point, I realized, I was in trouble. That whatever happened, these people's mind were made up. It eventually showed me pictures of the individuals they were referring to. I knew two of them, told them who they were, and that one of them had a complete dislike for me. Explained why, and it didn't seem to matter. The person that I was talking about, this wasn't her first time falsely accusing me of a crime, and it seemed to carry the day. So he ended the interview. I was still open to answer questions. I was still willing to talk to him, but if I wasn't confessing, then he didn't want to hear what I had to say. So he took me to Tulsa County Jail, booked me in, and the fight began.
So now Vic Regulato is the sheriff for Tulsa County. How do you feel about that fact that the person that didn't believe you is now in charge of an entire department?
It's terrifying for me. So the crime happened October 23rd, 2010, and I was arrested November 17th, 2010. So initially, when he was asking me about where I was the night of the shooting, I'm thinking, you're talking about last night, so I'm trying to account for where I was last night. When he tells me the date of the offense, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know where I was 2 weeks and 4 days, 6 hours ago. Like, I don't, off the top of my head, I didn't have a structured life back then. I said all that to say that he had my case for one day. He didn't get on my case until after the guy died. The guy died November 15th, and he got on my case November 16th. And he re-interviewed one witness, Brandon Rico Savage, and the other witness, the female I was talking about, over the phone. And he said, based off of that physical witness, Brandon Savage, that he was 100% sure I was the shooter. So before he ever interviewed me the following day, November 17th, his mind was made up before he interviewed me. It's scary because this same guy just admitted that he didn't know who the shooter was too. Everyone said the exact same thing. All of these people couldn't identify the shooter. I was never implicated in any way, nor should I have been. So for him to be on my case for 24 hours and to be positive that I'm the assailant after this guy has changed the story from I have no clue to it was him, this is how it happened, that was scary. And he said the same thing in trial. There were no other suspects. I was always the only suspect, which is crazy, not true, because he used a big gang fight that happened 27 hours before the shooting, which was a retaliation shooting, to tie me to the shooting, which is, how do you tell someone that, this person was the only suspect when this guy was documented in a gang fight, not much more than a day before. So that didn't make sense. And then you go to, this guy had this huge beef online, War Star Hip Hop back then, with infamous rapper Snoop Dogg. Over 300,000 views, some of these videos where he's getting threats from around the country. My my initial public defender, Ms. Marnie Hill, she let me know that they went out to LA to question him about this altercation. So he already knew this information and I didn't. Yet, you told my jury that I was always the only suspect, when even people who aren't my peers, even people who are on white collar people, professional people, lawyers, judges, even they know who Snoop Dogg is, right? So I believe that the facts were just misrepresented intentionally to get the outcome that they believed they should have gotten. So it scares me that this guy is now head sheriff. Also, to remind you, 2010 was the big dirty cop ring in Tulsa County. People forget about that. You know, multiple officers were indicted for committing felonies, you know, fabricating information, drugs, all kinds of stuff, ties with gangs, just all kinds of things that when you're in my position, you notice because you see the same type of attitude from these officers, you know, the way they speak, the way they go about things. And since I've been inside, I've been able to study my case and dissect it. And you can see it. You can see it all in the paperwork. You can see it in the years and years of the public defender's office telling me that my file had been destroyed. And then when they finally recant and say that it wasn't destroyed, that just denying me access to it, even though I had legal counsel trying to obtain it. What are you trying to hide? You know, why are you running from the facts? So he threatened me in my interrogation with being on video committing the crime. I told him it's not possible. So now I'm requesting the video. Where is it? What happened to the video footage? You know, and why do I have to request it? Why do I have to ask for it? Why didn't your investigators go and secure that? You know, so it's like whatever narrative they want to paint, that's what it is now, and the gloves are off. I think what's more scary is that people assume people who've never been in trouble with the law. Thank God they haven't, but they don't know. They don't know how dirty the system can be. The law is the law, and we all have rights. And when you begin to violate a person's rights intentionally or a roundabout way, in a way that the public doesn't see, you know, it's malicious. And that's how you get wrongful convictions. When you make up your mind about someone you've never met, you've never interviewed, that's also shoddy police work. It goes against what you're taught to do. So to see someone who has excelled in his field and is now the head sheriff, when I look at my case, it just makes me wonder, you know, what other cases did he not have integrity in? But I know for my case, personally, he screwed me over. And I believe that he knew he was doing it. This witness that he used, these witnesses have recanted their testimony unintentionally a lot of times. We have so much documentation that can prove it. And you can look back at the timeline and you can tell that he was aware of this information. And he turned a blind eye to it. He was okay with convicting me.
You mentioned that you kind of have unintentionally become like a mentor to some of the guys. How did that come about?
I think it stems just from my upbringing. You know, I've definitely made mistakes in my life, but I've always been a people person. Boy Scouts taught me a lot about leadership and, you know, just being there for your neighbor. My faith also requires that and teaches that. So it comes second nature. I try to be an open book for people who want to talk or have questions. But fighting my case, you know, so many men, they come in here and, you know, they lose hope. This is a place of hopeless men. It really is. And so a lot of these guys have seen me grow up in prison. You know, they've seen the kid that came in and, you know, was going crazy and didn't know how he was going to get out of here, who didn't understand the law in any way. And they've seen the progression of where I am now. And so they have questions and they're curious, you know, how did you stay focused? How did you get caught up in the gangs? How did you get caught up, you know, and how did you lose hope? You know, how do you keep your head up? And, you know, I tell them what I go through, you know, that I struggle too, that I've had days where, you know, I was hopeless, that I've had people have to pick me up. And so because I've experienced this personally, I try to be that person for other people.
When you think about people like Glenn Simmons, who was exonerated, people like Richard Glossop, who, you know, the U.S. Supreme Court
Man.
Overturned his death sentence. And even Julius Jones was spared from death penalty. You believe that the state is more focused on the finality of the conviction versus justice.
Yeah.
Explain that to regular Oklahomans who don't know what you mean by that.
When someone is convicted by a jury of their peers, it is common knowledge, so to speak, that people who don't understand the law, they think that justice was served. They think that if a jury found you guilty, that they had all the facts, represented the right way, that no laws were broken, that your constitutional rights were upheld, that everything went as it should have been, and you were found guilty based on the evidence that was lawful. And I think they don't realize how much taint and malicious intent and suppression of evidence and misrepresentation of facts. I don't think they realize how much of that happens every day. How much bad state actors are biased in cases. Finality of conviction is it's like no one wants to undo what's been done because of the names that saw it through, because of the relationships that saw it through, or because of the people who have excelled in their careers because of certain convictions. Like I said, this guy is head sheriff now, and we can prove that, you were a central role in my conviction. You intentionally misled my jury. You intentionally put forth information that damaged my case, So
you talked a lot about how your faith has, kept you grounded. What is your faith, and how did you develop your faith?
Oh man, you got to go way back for that one. So my grandmother, Channen Smith, man, she is in heaven with God now. But she started planting seeds when I was a kid. I would climb up in her lap and she would read the Bible out loud, and she showed me how to pray, and it's her genuine spirit. You come in her house and you can feel the peace in her home. It's like, when you go to church and you sit up straight and, you put your best on, that was my grandmother's energy, no matter where she was. You always wanted to be your best around her. And she just was consistent. The way she lived, the way she spoke, the way she loved, even the way she disciplined. You could see God in her whole being. And she passed it along to one of my favorite aunts, my Aunt Faye, and she was also central in planting seeds. And so, even going to church young, even though I was forced to do it, for a time, there were seeds being planted there. And being in prison is a place where people are all around you, but you still feel alone. You still feel isolated. And you find God. A lot of people make fun of it, but God doesn't care where you are when you find him. He wants you to find him. So I've had a lot of time to study and to read, to reflect on who I want to be, how I want to live. And he's changed me from the inside out. So I'm still a work in progress, but I'm definitely growing every day. I'm conscious of people. I'm conscious of his existence, that I have everything with him and nothing without him. So I just put my confidence in him, even as I fight this case, and the attorneys, I have an amazing group of attorneys fighting for me now. And, we filed the initial brief, pro se. That was prayer and fasting, man. That was completely dependent upon God and his grace, not my ability. Because the AG and the state, their resources are unlimited,
If released from prison, Channen Smith wants to become an advocate for those still inside. He said the horror of what you experience in prison never leaves you.
It's been a long time coming, hug my parents and cry, breathe, actually, go to service. But I want to re-enter prison. I want to come back in here. I want to get badged and come back in prison and make a difference. I want to be an advocate. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to look yet. I'm talking to some people about it.
So you're already planning
Yes.
to become an advocate for after you get out?
Yeah, I believe that I'll be out of here soon. I know it in my spirit. And yeah, I want to make a difference. Like I said, the men in here are still someone's sons. They're still fathers. They're still brothers, still uncles. They still have value. And if I can just show them that, it can change a person. It took other men in here pouring into me that helped me grow. It kept me from succumbing to this place. The things you experience in prison, they can really shape your life for the negative, the bad. They make you see the worst in people, the way you're treated, the way you're viewed. And especially in my situation when no one believes you, Sorry.
No, take your time. But there's people out there who believe you now.
Thank God. So, you do have to find hope to pick yourself up and to keep going, to keep fighting. And some of these guys will never leave this place. But even while they're here, they can make a change in their lives, in their own lives, the lives of people like mine, their families, just seeing the change in them, And I want them to know that, that I have grown up in here. I was 21. I'll be 36 next month. That's a long time. So I see a lot of these men like family, and my heart goes out to them.
What was a moment that almost broke you that your faith helped you overcome?
It started early, jury trial. My goodness. I was so sure, even though I was in the county 2.5 years, I was so sure that there was no way I would be convicted of a crime, not in this country, I didn't commit. There's no way. And man, jury trial. But then, you have direct appeal and you have hope. Like, okay, here's another shot. Denial. That was another time. So every time I was denied, you can say. So some years in between, I believe about 8, I was trying to form a post-conviction to just use the trial record. I knew that there was enough in the trial record to show what I've been saying all this time. So I was doing that. I had an attorney, Trailer Boy at the time, and the new evidence came in, and that changed everything. That gave me a new desire, a new spark, more hope than I've ever had, that this guy had confessed to the crime, that he had laid it out, that his family was trying to help me get out, that this was going to happen. And then I was denied again. It's like, how? What is it? And I mean, like in 2 months, it wasn't like this was some drawn out thing. I mean, quick denial. And I appealed it and I was denied again, so I've been knocked off the horse, so to speak, a lot of times. This has not happened easy. I know people, they see this side of it now and they think that it's been easy, but I've been told no a lot. And so for her to rule the way she has, it's already changed my life. It really has. It's changed my family. When I talk to them, they're different. They're making plans.
Aside from being back with family, being an advocate after you were freed, what's just some fun activities you want to do that maybe you haven't gotten to do, but you've thought about for all this time?
Travel, and I want to travel. I want to see the world. Crazy zip line. Water sports, I'd love to do. You know, the jetpack thing in the water. I love to do that. Just, you know, you name it. You know, I like it all. Four-wheelers, dirt bikes, even the simple things, though. It's really the simple things that I'm craving. You know, to have a dog. You know, my dog died since I've been in here. You know, this was like, you know, I've missed him more than I've missed a lot of people. I hate to say that, but it's true. And my dog died. So, you know, I think about that, you know, having pets and horseback riding, you know, sitting on the porch early in the morning, you know, watching the sunrise, you know, going out on dates, you know, just simple things, being able to take my woman to a restaurant or, you know, hug my mom whenever I feel like it. You know, just simple stuff.
Things that people take for granted all the time.
Yeah.
When you're released, when your conviction is overturned, are you going to go back to Tulsa County to live your life? And how do you feel about going back to the county that convicted you?
You know, I've said both. You know, I said that I definitely want to move from Tulsa. And then at the same time, I have to be open to what God wants me to do. And I believe that he has given me a heart for prison ministry. And, you know, I've gave these men my word, and I intend to keep it, that I will be back in Oklahoma prisons. And I plan to start with the ones that I've been incarcerated in. So I'll have to be here or close to here, you know. I'm trying to stay focused. I have less than a month now to respond. So I'm just looking forward to what's next.
Just when I was getting ready to wrap up our interview, Channen showed me what he considered evidence of retaliation for his case moving forward. According to documents he obtained from Department of Corrections staff, Channen was written up for having a cell phone a week before our first interview back in May. He challenged the write-up and demanded footage of the alleged infraction. According to the documents, the write-up was dismissed 5 days later, 1 day before our May 14th interview.
And they began to do a lot of shakedowns on me and guys close to me, guys that I hang out with. And it was obvious what it was. You know, we all knew. But like, again, we couldn't prove it. So a shakedown was conducted on the unit that I was in, the housing unit that I was in. And Officer Thomas Brewing said that he located a tablet on my bunk that had a cell phone inside of it, wrote me up, and the guy tried to get me to sign for the write-up. Well, I refused. I talked to 2 different lieutenants. I talked to my unit manager, and they all said, well, my officer said that's what happened. It's his word against yours. And I said, well, okay. So, you know, thinking about, you know, these guys were body cam now. I'm like, well, look, well, you know that, you know, you guys are supposed to help me. I'm telling you that this isn't true. You're not going to look into it. It's just his word against mine. You know, that's how I got here. You guys are falsifying information, and you're doing it knowingly and willingly. And even though you didn't do it yourself, you're aware of it because I'm making you aware of it. Well, it seemed like there was nothing I could do. So I said, well, you guys know the media is going to be here soon, and I would hate to, you know, distract from my case and talk about this, but I will if I have to. And I said, well, I want to see the body cam. You guys are supposed to wear a body cam. That's what you have it on for, just like law enforcement in the world. And 5 days later, that write-up was dismissed. I wasn't notified that it was dismissed. I had to go and ask about the write-up again after our interview, and then I was told that it was dismissed. Even the write-up, I never got a copy of the write-up. I had to go and ask my case manager for a copy of it. When, if you look at this check at the bottom of the first page, it asks you, I have received a copy of written charges against me. I realize I have a right to remain silent, and it's checked, but I never received that. I had to request a copy of it 20 days later. People look at it as a small thing, but it's not a small thing. It's things like this that happen in here, and they also happen out there. When you get law enforcement authority figures falsifying documents in order to get whatever it is they're seeking, that's how you get wrongful convictions. And even in here, this write-up would have prevented my family from being able to visit me. It would have prevented me from privileges like canteen, how much you can draw down when you go get hygiene or food. If we were to have a food sale or something like that. Also, when I think about some of the accusations that the state has made against me, it makes me wonder why something like this would be done. one of the orderlies reported hearing this same officer on the phone with Oklahoma City saying, yes, we have Channen Smith here at MacAlford doing a shakedown, supposedly routine shakedown. Same day this happened. So it's like, who were you talking to? And, why is Oklahoma City having me shook down? Also, there was an officer, lieutenant, I won't say his name, but they continued to shake me down even when I was rehoused on B unit, and I was frustrated. So the last time they did it, I told them, hey, you guys can't just come in here every time you want to shake me down. Why are you in here? He had initially pulled me to a side, body cam off, and told me, hey, you pissed somebody off in Oklahoma City. That's the truth. So I explained to him what was going on with my case. He said, yeah, well, that sounds about right. It stood out because I began to get shook down by just lieutenants, it stands out when that happens, because usually it's random officers or lower ranking officers. And this guy, he even told me, I haven't messed with you since you've been here. When they call, I come. Well, I gave him a piece of my mind the last time they came in my cell. One was being a little aggressive through my boots. And so I told him, I said, hey, your name may be in a lawsuit soon because you're harassing me. I may be incarcerated, but I still have rights. So they went and reported to this same lieutenant, and he took it upon himself to go to the local gang members on the unit and shake them down and tell them that he only came to shake me down, but because he didn't like how I spoke to his officers, that he would shake them down. So that is definitely a form of retaliation, because if he finds something in their cells that costs them money or they're not supposed to have, I'm the reason, and I'm not gang affiliated, that could put me in harm's way. So the next day, I'm thinking this is over. That group of guys, like, look, we know what's going on with you. Don't worry about it. Well, the next morning, another gang comes to me, same issue, and told me, hey, I don't know what you got going on with this guy, but you need to watch it. Just watch what you say to him, kind of keep your head down. And he told me what he told him, which was the exact same thing. So you went home, went to sleep, showered, ate, did whatever else you did, came back to work, and went to the next gang, again, trying to retaliate for how I spoke to your officers. It's unprofessional. It could have got me hurt. And it's just another example of retaliation. What did I do to you personally that would make you put me in harm's way, put your career at risk, or you're supposed to be here to keep the peace, to protect and serve, not rile, pit the inmates against each other. And that's what they do, So it's deeply rooted. It's interwoven in these facilities, in this place, because I've been in here for such a long time. I know a lot of these men, so it didn't work, but I've seen it work against other inmates firsthand. I've even been asked to do it myself. Well, if you guys don't get that guy, we're going to come up there and shake down. That's crazy. So it is corruption. It is inappropriate, and it changes lives when the inmates in here can't trust the inmates or the staff. So these are reasons why I'm set on returning to prison. When I'm not under the thumb as an inmate of these officers, when I can come in here with authority and make a difference, when I can come in here like you're doing and say, hey guys, what's going on? I can get this information to where it needs to go to make a difference if you'll speak out.
In response to Channen's claims of retaliation, the Oklahoma Department of Corrections sent me the following statement. ODOC does not tolerate retaliation in any form and takes all complaints of retaliation seriously. Anyone found to have retaliated is held accountable for their actions through the agency's disciplinary process, including termination if deemed appropriate. We have zero tolerance for retaliation. Channen Smith's cell phone possession misconduct was dismissed and correctly issued based on evidence, as another inmate stepped forward to say the cell phone was his. This is a routine dismissal. Dismissals of misconducts do happen for various reasons, such as another inmate was determined to be guilty of the infraction, the misconduct procedure was not handled within the time allowed by policy, or may be dismissed following the appeals process. Is there anything else that you want people to know?
That I'm a fighter. and I'm going to continue to fight for what's right. And I wish more people in authority would maintain the integrity of their positions, no matter where they are. You know, when you're given authority, you should honor it. And when you don't, you will be exposed sooner or later. It will come out.
Thank you, Channen.